Lee Summit, by far one of the most popular suburbs on the Missouri side in Kansas City. And it's not just because of the schools, being surrounded by a bunch of lakes, having a very small town feel that's just charming and historic, but there's one really big reason, in addition to those, that so many people are moving to Lee Summit from outside of Kansas City. It's the low cost of living. In this video, we're going to break down how much it costs to live in Lee Summit compared to suburbs on the Kansas side, other suburbs in Missouri. We're going to break down the sales tax, the property tax, and we will also break down the exact numbers you need to calculate how much your home will cost, whether it's a new home or an old home in Lee Summit. Let's get started. For number one, how exactly does Lee Summit's cost of living compare to the rest of the country and some of the other suburbs that you might be researching in Kansas City, both Kansas and on the Missouri side? So here's how it compares to the rest of the nation. We're 6% below the rest of the country. And then if you look at Missouri, we're about 7% above the average throughout the state. Now, here's a picture that'll compare Lee Summit to other suburbs in Kansas City. You can see the Kansas side, there's a big drop off. And if at this point in your research, most likely you're aware of that drop off, that's Johnson County. It's a little bit more expensive. And it has a lot of things in common with Lee Summit, although there are some really big differences, the small town feel, being surrounded by lakes. But overall, the common denominator is that they're all very safe. You've got nice schools, you've got good places to go shopping. There is a big drop off as you get into the Missouri side, and you'll see that Lee Summit even is a little bit more expensive than some of the other suburbs like Kansas City, Missouri, Independence, Raymore, Belton, and many others. However, it's not the most expensive. In fact, if you look at Parkville, if you look at both of the lakes like Lottawanna, Winnebago, those are going to be more expensive, usually because the lakefront homes are in the millions of dollars and they're absolutely beautiful. But Lee Summit is very much the middle of the pack, and it's certainly on the lower end, especially if we compare it to some of those tip-top suburbs on the Kansas side. Now, here's a chart that'll compare the cost of living in Lee Summit to Kansas City, Missouri, which is the largest city in Missouri. That's the one everybody's talking about when they refer to Kansas City, as you very well know at this point. But you can see Lee Summit's about 13% more expensive. But if you go down that list, you'll notice everything's pretty comparable. Like the food and groceries are within 4%. The housing, however, is the big sticking point. This is where the biggest difference can be found. 60% more expensive to buy a home in Lee Summit than Kansas City, Missouri. Now, that's a statistic that I think is flawed. And unless you really dive in and look at the real estate market, it's hard to identify that just based on this chart. So here's a picture of a home in Kansas City, Missouri. This is kind of what exemplifies the homes that are really dragging down that median in Kansas City. And it's hard to say that this is an outlier because there are so many of these homes at this price point that are really weighing it down. So the difference between average and median is kind of a wash when it comes to this distinction. Now, this type of home you will not find in Lee Summit. And if you wait until the end of this video, we're going to break down exactly what your money can get you at several different price points starting from below $300,000. So that explains the 60% difference. Is it really 60%? I don't think so. I think at most it's 20%, but what you're getting in Lee Summit, a little bit better schools according to all of the ratings, and it's going to feel a little bit safer according to the sites like niche.com, etc. And you've also got all of those lakes in very close proximity, which is why Lee Summit is still pretty affordable, and that extra money that you pay, I think, goes a long way. There's a lot of value built into it. Part number two is all about property taxes, and I know they're the absolute worst, but you're kind of stuck with them, and it makes sense to really have a good understanding of what they'll look like, because it could make the difference between whether that home's affordable or whether you've got to find something else. And usually whenever a home is sold, you know the deal, those property taxes, they're going to go up, especially if it hasn't been reassessed in the last 2 years, or the owner's done a lot of improvements, or it's new construction. Just got to be aware of the cost. So here's a map that'll show you how the state of Missouri's tax rate, property tax rate, compares to the rest of the country. And I know it's a little bit darker than probably what you want to see, but even though it's more expensive than some of the coastal states in the United States, the overall cost of living is still quite a bit lower. So it all kind of evens out, and it's kind of a wash. Home prices are more affordable. So even though the property taxes are a little bit higher, you're still going to be coming out on top, saving a good amount of money. So in Jackson County, the property tax rate is about 1.43%. That's the average for the entire county. Lee Summit, however, most of it falls in Jackson County, although the southern border, here's a picture of it, actually falls in Clay County, just down to the south. So So I will leave 2 links in the description for you. One is to the mill rate, the tax rate, basically how they calculate property taxes in Jackson County. Another is going to be for Clay County, so you can get the exact numbers. But I'm going to show you one example to kind of set this in stone. Since most of Lee Summit's in Jackson County, that's what we're going to run off of. So average in Lee Summit in Jackson County, you're looking at 1.534%. There's going to be a little bit of variance. Totally depends on the part of the city that you're in, especially if you're in the northeast part of Lee Summit, then you fall in the Blue Springs district, and now that tax rate changes just a little bit. So here's an example of a home that's priced at $585,000, and I'll show you the exact tax records. The assessed value is around $417,000, and when this sells, it's going to jump up quite a bit. But you can see as of right now, it's listed, the property taxes are listed at $6,395.84, and that basically amounts to the 1.534% that you can use to calculate exactly how much you'll owe in property taxes on your new home. Now, before we go into part number 3, hit that like button and subscribe for other videos about Lee Summit and the best suburbs in Kansas City. If you find it helpful, let me know and hit that like button. We're gonna move on to number 3. This is sales tax and income tax, how it compares to the rest of the country, and also how Lee Summit compares to other suburbs you might be looking at. So first, here's a map of the entire country, and this will show you kind of on a color scale how we compare. So Kansas at 5.7%, Missouri at 4.95%. You know, unfortunately, we're not one of those 7 states that has no income tax, but it's nice to know that if you are thinking of moving here, or maybe you've already made that choice, that it's most likely going to be a little bit less expensive than where you might be coming from. So let's put this into concrete terms. We're going to compare Lee Summit to Overland Park versus Kansas City. Here's that chart. I want to draw your attention to the income tax row, and you can see that Lee Summit's at 5.4%, Overland Park's at 5.7%, and Kansas City, Missouri's at 6.4%. Now, I know that's an outlier, and the reason is because Kansas City, Missouri has an infamous 1% tax on all earned income. Whether you live there or you just work there, you're going to be dinged with that 1%. So right off the bat, you can save an additional 1%, which I know sounds small, but it can be a lot of money, especially if you're making over 6 figures a year. If you move to Lee Summit, you get to put extra money in your pocket at the end of the day, and that's always nice to see. So let's move on to the sales tax row. 7.9% versus 9.1 versus 8.6, kind of all over the place. But Lee Summit still, even in the sales tax category, it's falling on the lower side. Now, if we actually looked at the dollar difference per every $1,000 spent, this is not going to be huge. I don't think your decision is going to come down to sales tax, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. Now, the final part of this video, parts 4 and 5, I'm going to show you exactly what the home prices look like and how you can figure out exactly what to budget for, whether you're looking for a new home or an old home. And then we're going to break down in each category. So on what can you get under $350, what can you get under $6, and what can you get under $8. And as we go through all of this, I'll kind of explain the real estate market, what you can expect from some of these homes in Lee Summit. So how does it compare to the national average? Well, according to Zillow, the typical home price in Lee Summit is $362,000, which is about $23,000 below the typical value across the country, which is hovering around $340,000. Now, the very specific price per square foot number for all homes that have sold since December up until now, when I'm filming this, which is May 2023, here's an example of all the new homes. They're kind of bouncing around between $228 a square foot and $230. But you can see this is based on 430 sales. You can take that number, that 230, I would take the high side, multiply by however many square feet you anticipate yourself needing, and that's the exact price you'd pay for new homes. There are a lot of them, and we'll discuss some of those new homes here in just a second. But for older homes, here's what it looks like. You can see it's about 149 on the low end, which is when interest rates are really, really high. And as the housing market kind of heated up a little bit, right now in May, we're looking at about 166, which is held steady, but I think it'll probably be going up a little bit. Now, there are a lot of older homes in Lee Summit, but Lee Summit, for the most part, you're going to find homes that are, were built in the mid 1900s. You're going to find some homes that were built in the mid 2000s, which is very, very nice. And sometimes, like one that I'll show you here in just a second, you'll find a new home that's only a year old that, the owner has to up and sell because they've got to relocate for work or for family related matters. And you're getting a brand new home at a lower price than you pay to replicate it or build one yourself. Now, the last part of the video, what exactly does your money get you? Whatever your price range is, whether it's under $350, $400, $600, etc. I'm going to show you a couple examples of what you can expect in Lee Summit. So I'm going to stop doing the talking. Here's exactly what you can get for $337,000. while that home was priced at $185 a square foot, I'm going to show you another home that's brand new construction priced at $588,500. Take a look. Now, here's possibly the best bang for your buck when it comes to a really big home at very low price per square foot. The exterior is beautiful, but the inside might need a little bit of touching up depending on what you want. But here's a home that's about $800,000, all brick exterior. And here's one of those newer new construction homes that's been lived in for just a little bit, but you get it below reproduction costs and below the cost if it was brand spanking new. So here's exactly what you can get for $780,000. So TLDR, the final thoughts about cost of living in Lee Summit compared to the surrounding cities. As you very well saw, not only the home prices are going to be more affordable, you're going to get more bang for your buck. It's a suburb. It's tucked outside of Kansas City, which has a little bit more hustle and bustle. And you've got, distinctly better schools according to niche.com and all of the ranking sites like greatschools.org. Now, if you are stuck at a fork in the road between living in the Kansas side or living in the Missouri side, I think Lee Summit is one suburb that really bridges that gap. It's not the same. It's hard to compare because it's like comparing apples to oranges, but you're going to get more for your money. You're going to get a lot of the same benefits, and your money is just going to go pretty far, especially when it comes to new construction, because there's a lot to choose from. The best amenities, we've got some communities in Lee Summit that have several pools, and overall, I think even if you were to build a home, you're probably going to get to do a little bit more customization on that home than you would if you were paying some of the prices in like an Overland Park, Olathe, Lenexa, etc. So there you have it, the cost of living in Lee Summit. I know everybody's got specific things that they're looking for, and if I didn't speak to any of those in this video, go ahead in the description below. All my contact information is there. If you're moving from outside of Kansas City, I'd love to set up a time to talk with you. If you think we'd be a good fit, let's go ahead and get it on the schedule. We can answer some of your specific questions. Make sure you've got a clear roadmap to victory when it comes to moving from out of state. There's a lot of things to juggle, and I'd love to speed it up and make it a little bit easier on you. So if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe for other videos like this, and I'll see you on the next one.